So I think we can start. Okay. So Sumki has started recording. So I'm reading each sentence. We have to redo the para. Correct. So it is here that yoga steps in. It begins by using knowledge, emotion, and action for the possession of the divine. So let's see, it is an integral yoga because yoga here put Y cap, so he is referring to only the integral yoga. And in the integral yoga, you use your mind knowledge, you use your vital emotion, you use your body also for action. So it is the entire being you are using for the integral yoga. You don't do that. For Jnana Yoga, you use only the mind. For Bhakti Yoga, you use only the emotion. And for Karma Yoga, you use only the action of the body with the will. Okay? But here in Integral Yoga, everything is turned to the divine. Whatever your knowledge you are getting, to the divine. Emotions also all turn towards the divine. Even every action that you do, you are doing it for the divine. So, for yoga is a conscious and perfect seeking of union with the divine, towards which all the rest was an ignorant and imperfect moving and seeking. The whole purpose of life becomes only one pointedness to manage to somehow or other get the divine. At first, then, yoga separates itself from the action and method of the lower knowledge. So, what do you mean by this? Non-identification with your body, mind, and life. This is my outer being. I am not this. Okay? Separates it from the action, that means the body, and the method of the lower knowledge. Lower knowledge, my mental knowledge as well as the vital movements. So that's a lower knowledge. So you are not identifying yourself with it. He says there are two ways of doing it. Shyamnu says elsewhere. Shyamnu says it is better to think of yourself as a soul. You can do it in a negative way. I am not the body, I am not the vital, I am not the mind. But the better way is to constantly think that I am the soul. I am the soul. Not so much of rejection of body, mind, life, which is okay, but more towards the soul, leaning more to positive method. That's what Shyamnu says. So, at first, then, yoga separates itself from the action and method of the lower knowledge. For while this lower knowledge approaches God indirectly from outside and never enters the secret dwelling place, yoga calls us within and approaches him directly. So yoga calls us within. So he is saying this, you have to, the inward must become more important than the outward. Okay? The first method is separate yourself from the body, mind, life. Second is the method. Go within yourself. Live within. Okay? And then the third method is yoga seeks him through realization, lifts the veil and gets the full vision, where that only feeds the presence and the influence. Yoga enters into the presence and fills itself with the influence. In other words, you can see the divine in the universe outside yourself, but you are using your senses. So it is indirect. But now when you go into yourself, it is direct. Okay, that's what it says. Yoga enters into the presence and fills itself with the influence, where that is only aware of the workings in the physical world and through them gets some glimpse of the reality. Yoga identifies our inner being with the reality and sees from that the workings. The workings of what? The workings of nature. Therefore, the methods of yoga are different from the methods of the lower knowledge. Lower knowledge, science, going outwards, knowing the practical life, is the lower knowledge. So, method of yoga, inner knowledge. Okay, you go into yourself. So that's what he's saying. Now, the method of yoga in knowledge. So we are in the paragraph, in the whole section where he is dealing with the yoga of individual knowledge. So this is the knowledge aspect. Okay. So we read the next one. One of you has to read the method of yoga in knowledge. Kiran has not read for many days. And you want to read?
Yes, Gada.
You got
Shall
it?
I read?
Yes, I have.
Yes, you can. Both of you, one of you can read. Yasmin can read, and Kiran will rule afterwards. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
Yasmin, read the method of yoga.
The method of yoga in knowledge must always be a turning of the eye inward, and so far as it looks upon outer things, a penetrating of the surface appearance to get at the one eternal reality within them. The knower knowledge is preoccupied with the appearances and workings. It is the first necessity of the higher to get away from them to the reality of which they are the appearances and the being and power of conscious existence, of which they are the workings. It does this by three movements, each necessary to each other, by each of which the others becomes complete. Purification, concentration, identification. The object of purification is to make the whole mental being a clear mirror in which the divine reality can be reflected, a clear vessel and an unobstructing channel into which the divine presence and through which the divine influence can be poured, a subtilized substance which the divine nature can take possession of, new shape and use to divine issues. For the mental being at present reflects only the confusions created by the mental and physical view of the world. It is a channel only for the disorders of the ignorant lower nature and full of obstructions and impurities which prevent the higher from acting. Therefore, the whole shape of our being is deformed and imperfect, indocile to the highest influences, and turned in its action to ignorance and inferior utilities. It reflects even the world falsely. It is incapable of reflecting the divine.
Okay, quite a small paragraph. One, we read what he said. The method of yoga in knowledge. He is not talking of bhakti yoga or karma yoga. He is talking of knowledge. The whole section now is knowledge. He has divided synthesis into several parts. First is the introduction, about 30, 40, 50 pages. Then he comes to the karma yoga. Then we are discussing the jnana yoga. Okay, in the integral yoga, jnana yoga. Then the second volume, actually, you have got only one volume. So that he discusses very short the bhakti yoga. Finally, the yoga of integral perfection, which is his own yoga. So here he is discussing the karma yoga as it should be applied in integral yoga. The method of yoga in knowledge must always be a turning of the eye inward, and so far as it looks upon outer things, a penetrating of the surface appearances to get at the one eternal reality behind them. So it's very interesting what he's saying. First of all, try to see the divine presence within yourself. And since you are living in the world, you are either looking outwards, your ears are hearing sounds from outwards. Whatever you are seeing, whatever you are experiencing, try to see the divine in everything. If you remember that mantra which Sri Aurobindo gave to, I think, no. Yeah. In all things, may I see the divine. That is there. If you remember that, the little on birthday, Champakla's birthday, Sri Aurobindo gave that to him. In the night, I'm reciting the mantra, okay? It's almost a mantra. In the night, as in the day, be always with me. In sleep as in waking, let me feel in myself, let me see, let me feel in me the reality of your presence. Let it sustain and make to grow in me truth, consciousness, and bliss. Okay? This is constantly and at all times. This is given to Champakla. But the other one is, I think, Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame. Okay? This is another one. Then there's the other one, Om Sri Aurobindo Mira. Open my mind, my heart, my life to your light, your love, your power. In all things, may I see the divine. These three mantras are there, very powerful. One can go on reciting them throughout life. So that's what he's saying now. Look inside and outside, in all things, may I see the divine. That's what he's saying. So far as it looks upon outer things, a penetrating of the surface appearances to get at the one eternal reality within them. So look behind the form, beyond the form, and try to see the divine there. You may feel that it's not possible, but it is possible because will, the human will, is very powerful and it has to be constantly applied. Then it is possible to do that. Then the lower knowledge of the senses, is preoccupied with the appearances and workings. And the workings means the processes of things. Science is constantly trying to find out the processes of things, how things work. Okay? It is the first necessity of the higher to get away from them to the reality which they are in appearances and the being and power of conscious existence of which they are the workings. Okay? The divine is there and the outer things are only the functionings of the divine consciousness. It does this by three movements, each necessary to each other, by each of which the others become complete. And what are the three methods? Purification, concentration, identification. Identification with the soul, the self. The object of purification is to make the whole mental being a clear mirror in which the divine reality can be reflected, a clear vessel and an unobstructing channel into which the divine presence and through which the divine influence can be poured. A subtilized stuff of the divine nature can make possession. Sorry. One second. My page is jumped. Yeah. So objective purification is unobstructed channel into which the divine presence and through which the divine can be poured. A subtilized stuff of which the divine nature can take possession of new shape and use for divine issues. Now look at the series and the sequence. First of all, the object of purification is to make the mind. He is concentrating on the mind. Okay? And it must become pure as a clear mirror. When you go to the level 2, you don't see the reality, you don't see the truth. You see a reflection of the truth. Okay? This is the characteristic of the higher mind. You don't see the truth, you see the reflection. Okay? In level 2 of spiritual planes. Now he's saying, and it can be reflected. Here put a comma, after can be reflected, and a clear vessel and an unobstructed channel. Which is this? He's talking of the vital. The vital has to become, first he spoke of the mind, it has to become like a clear mirror. Second is a clear vessel, the vital, and an unobstructed channel into which the divine presence and through which the divine influence can be poured. Next he's talking of the body, a subtilized stuff, the body, which the divine nature can take possession of, new shape and use to divine issues. When the yoga starts, all the Impurities of the mind first are dissolved. That's the first action. Second action is the vital starts getting purer, and all the um, obstructing stuff, okay, desires, attachments, ego, all these things are slowly removed. It takes a long time, but it does happen. Then finally, even this body starts changing. Note that a subtilized stuff of which the divine nature can take possession. Why? Because he has a new shape and use for divine issues. If you remember the line in Savitri, hammer, the pain is the hammer of the gods. So you are new shaping, okay, and taking possession of. The divine takes your body and new shapes it and makes it fit for divine issues. Divine powers to come into you. For the mental being at present reflects only the confusions created by the mental and physical view of the world. The mind is always turned outwards. We have to turn it inwards, and that is a purification. It is a channel only for the disorders of the ignorant lower nature and full of obstructions and impurities which prevent the higher from acting. If there is mud in your glass, okay, how will the light come in? So the mud has to disappear. The glass has to become absolutely transparent and clear. Then the light can come in and change, okay, from acting. Therefore, the whole shape of our being is deformed and imperfect. Indocile. The word docile, very, very passive. So indocile, not passive, not receptive to the divine consciousness. Indocile to the highest influences and turned in its action to ignorant and inferior utilities. In the physical world, we are always trying to make the utilities. Whatever is useful to us is valuable to us. But in the integral yoga, that importance to the utilities must be given up. It reflects even the world falsely. That we have seen many times. The senses don't give you the right knowledge. So it sees the world falsely. It is incapable of reflecting the divine. Therefore, you need the three processes: purification, concentration, and finally, identification. Identification even with the body, with the divine. There is a line in Savitri, even the body will remember God. Even the body will remember God. Our mind can remember, our body can be turned towards, but in the integral yoga, even the body will remember God. Fantastic. That's what it has to happen. Now, Kiran, you can read the next one. Concentration is necessary first. So, one by one, he has taken up purification. Now, in this paragraph, concentration, and afterwards, identification. Concentration is, yeah, read.
Concentration is necessary first to turn the whole will and mind from the discursive divagation natural to them, following a dispersed movement of the thoughts, running after many branching desires, led away in the track of the senses and the outward response to phenomenon. We have to fix the will and the thought on the eternal and real behind all. And this demands an immense effort, a one-pointed concentration. Secondly, it is necessary in order to break down the veil which is erected by our ordinary mentality between ourselves and the truth. For outer knowledge can be picked up by the way by ordinary attention and reception. But the inner, hidden, and higher truth can only be seized by an absolute concentration of the mind on its object and absolute concentration of the will to attain it, and once attained, to hold it habitually and securely, unite oneself with it. For identification is the condition of complete knowledge and possession. It is the intense result of a habitual, purified reflecting of the reality and an entire concentration on it. and it is necessary in order to break down entirely that division and separation of ourselves from the divine being and the eternal reality, which is the normal condition of our regenerated ignorant mentality.
That's,
None of
that's the next paragraph. None of these is the next paragraph. So
okay.
we'll quickly have a look at this. So first he spoke about purification. Now he's talking about concentration. Concentration is necessary first to turn the whole will and mind from a discursive divagation. Divagation is a dispersion and a turning away. Divagation. You go to the wrong direction. Digression. Discursive, that is distributes itself unevenly. Now, concentration is like a sharp knife. If you have a blunt knife, it will not cut properly. Therefore, it has to be concentrated. It has to be inward movement and make it sharp. Then it can pierce. It has a power to do that. So concentration has got a tremendous power. Okay? So that is why necessary. And necessary first to turn the whole will and mind from its discursive divagation. It's constantly moving away. It doesn't stay in one place, but you have to learn to keep the mind absolutely steady. Natural to them. Whole will and mind, it is natural that it goes on dispersing itself and distributing itself left and right without concentration. Following a dispersed movement of the thoughts, running after many branching desires, our desire is not only one, we have many, many desires, led away in the track of the senses and the outward mental response to phenomena. So he's talking of three things: the desires, then the senses, and then the mind. All of them are moving outwards. We have to fix the will and the thought on the eternal and real behind all. See, this is he's not talking of God, because that's the method of Bhakti Yoga. But here he's talking of the knowledge aspect, therefore the eternal and real behind all. You can substitute the words for the Bhakti Yoga, because then it becomes more the Bhakti Yoga rather than the Jnana Yoga. All this demands an immense effort. Simply a casual effort won't do. A one-pointed concentration. Secondly, it is necessary in order to break down the veils which is erected by our ordinary mentality between ourselves and the truth. The mind is going outwards and is constantly moving about. The movement itself becomes a veil. So the mind has to become absolutely silent, then the veil is removed. For outer knowledge can be picked up by the way, casually, by the way, by ordinary attention and research. Need not be very concentrated also. But the inner, hidden and higher truth can only be seized by an absolute concentration of the mind on its object. Whatever you want, you have to fix your mind on that. An absolute concentration of the will to attain it, and once attained, to hold it habitually and securely unite oneself with it. This holding habitually and securely unite is what is identification. You are completely now identified with the Lord. That's the identification. So he has dealt with concentration and identification in the same paragraph. Okay? For identification is a condition of complete knowledge and possession. It is the intense result of a habitual purified reflecting of the reality and an entire concentration on it. Constantly thinking of the Lord. Slowly there is purification that takes place, ending in finally identification. And it is necessary in order to break down entirely that division and separation of ourselves from the divine being and the eternal reality, which is the normal condition of our unregenerated, ignorant mentality. He is constantly speaking of the mentality because we are in the section on Jnana Yoga. Remember that. Okay? So, unregenerated. To generate is to give birth to. Regenerate, give birth again to. Unregenerated, that which cannot be given birth to. So, impure. That which is dirty remains dirty. That's what it means. We have now 10 minutes or even more. We can read the next paragraph also. Very simple language he has used, but he's telling you very clearly the three methods. You must remember all these methods. Purification, concentration, and finally becoming one with the divine. In our mind, our vital, and our even body, he says. Okay? Archana, if you have got the text, will you read? If she is not there, then Shilpa can read.
Yes.
No, Rangada, I will not be able to read. Shilpa, please read.
Okay.
Okay. None of this, no?
Yeah, that's it.
None of these things can be done by the methods of the lower knowledge. It is true that here also they have a preparing action, but up to a certain point and to a certain degree of intensity only. And it is where their action ceases, that the action of yoga takes up our growth into the divine and finds the mean to complete it. All pursuit of knowledge, if not viriated by a too earthward tendency, tends to refine, to subtilize, to purify the being. In proportion as we become more mental, we attend to a subtler action of our whole nature, which becomes more apt to reflect and receive higher thoughts, a purer will, a less physical truth, more inward influences. The power of ethical knowledge and the ethical habit of thought and will to purify is obvious. Philosophy not only purifies the reason and predisposes it to the contact of the universal and the infinite, but tends to stabilize the nature and create the tranquility of the sage. And tranquility is a sign of increasing self mastery and purity. The preoccupation with universal beauty, even in its aesthetic form, has an intense power for refining and subtilizing the nature, and at its height, it is a great force for purification. Even the scientific habit of mind and the disinterested preoccupation with cosmic law and truth not only refine the reasoning and observing faculty, but have, when not counteracted by other tendencies, a steadying, elevating, and purifying influence on the mind and moral nature which has not been sufficiently noticed.
Okay. So he's talking of the purification method. What are the things, how to purify and make it more subtle? So he's talking about the moral nature, then he's talking about philosophy, then he's talking about art, okay, beauty. All these things purify the being. Finally, he's saying even scientific pursuit of scientific knowledge, when it is disinterested and you're thinking of cosmic laws, okay, how does the universe work? Even that has a purifying effect. Much less, but it is there. So these four aspects he is looking at: morality, philosophy, okay, beauty, art, and finally even science. Okay, so quickly we'll go through. None of these things can be done by the methods of lower knowledge. Okay, the lower knowledge cannot do this concentration. It is true that here also they have a preparing action. So that's what he's saying, that morality, philosophy, okay, art and beauty and science are all methods of lower knowledge. All of them. They are methods of lower knowledge. But they still have some preparatory action. They can help. But up to a certain point and to a certain degree of intensity only. That's why he's discussing these four aspects. And it is where the action ceases that the action of yoga takes up our growth into the divine and finds a means to complete it. So, all pursuit of knowledge, if not vitiated by a to earthward tendency. When you're pursuing knowledge, even the knowledge aspect has a purifying effect. If not vitiated. By the way, when in English you have TI, it often becomes sh. Okay? So vitiated, like in attention. Okay? Remember, PI becomes sh. This is the vagary and the illogicality of the English language. So it's not vitiated by a too earthward tendency. Tends to refine, to subtilize, to purify the being. So to a certain extent, it can purify. Not fully, but it can do that. Preparation for purification. In proportion as we become more mental, we attain to a subtler action of our whole nature, which becomes more apt to reflect and receive higher thoughts, a purer will, a less physical truth, more inward influences. He is talking of the sattvic nature. When you are more in the mind rather than the vital and the body, you have a sattvic nature. It purifies you. As he's saying very clearly, in proportion as you become more mental. Okay? So that's the sattvic nature. We attain to a subtler action of our whole nature, which becomes more apt to reflect and receive higher thoughts, purer will, less physical truth, more inward influences. The power of ethical knowledge. Now we're talking about morality. Don't tell lies, don't hurt others. Very, very simple things. Okay? The power of ethical knowledge and the ethical habit of thought and will to purify is obvious, but very limited, but still obvious. Next comes to philosophy. Philosophy not only purifies reason and predisposes it to the contact of the universal and the infinite, but tends to stabilize, okay? Stabilize, make firm and not flimsy, not shaky, the nature and create the tranquility of the sage. And tranquility is a sign of increasing self-mastery and purity. The more calm and quiet you are, the more you can control yourself. The purification with universal beauty, the preoccupation with universal beauty, this is the art. He's talking about art. So all the four he has told you, it can to a certain extent purify, but not the real thing. The real you have to go inwards. All these activities which he is listing here are going outwards. Okay? So first is the, what was the first one? The knowledge. Knowledge, use of mind. Then the morality. Then philosophy. Finally, art. The preoccupation with universal beauty, even in its aesthetic forms, has an one second, I've lost it. Yeah, I got it. My page jumps. Okay, so preoccupation with universal beauty, even in its aesthetic forms, has an intense power for refining and subtilizing the nature. And at its highest, it's a great force of purification, appreciation of art and beauty. Even the scientific habit of mind, now even science is saying, that can also purify, provided you are absolutely objective about the knowledge you are seeking, not interested, but disinterested preoccupation with cosmic law and truth not only refine the reasoning and observing faculty, but have, when not counteracted by other tendencies, a steady, making it steady, elevating and purifying influence on the mind and moral nature, which has not been sufficiently noticed. Now, very interesting what he's saying here. He has developed the national value of art. He has described how art purifies the being. Your observation becomes keen, your senses also become subtilized. So that's what he's saying. Okay? So the concentration of the mind and the training of the will take up next time. It's 8:36. We have got 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I don't think we can finish it. Okay? So, the concentration of the mind and the training of the will. We'll take it up next time.
Yes,
I think
would
it's
like
better
to-
if we do it next time. It will be fresh in our mind.
That's right. That's right. So we'll do that. Will, Sunki has to note down page number 516, and we have to read the concentration of the mind. Okay.
Yes, I was-
Merci beaucoup.
Have a nice day.